Well, this is it, people. Mark this day, April 15th, 2020, as the date of the official start of the Great Decline, of the economic decline in 2020. It's kind of ironic, though I guess also in a way emblematic of this era, that the former deadline for our taxes, which has been pushed back to July now, is the same date that the the beginning of the acknowledgement and understanding of the real economy taking a blow from coronavirus and creating many permanent changes in the way that we do business and the way that we understand value, the way that we conduct family life, and what I have talked about in my book, Transforming Economy, as a new emphasis on community starts. It starts today, Wednesday, April 15th, 2020. It is the first day that, even despite all the signs that have been leading up to this, that Wall Street has finally recognized that the real economy, that's you and me, purchasing goods, making decisions, actually has any impact on them. So I'll just jump right to today's CNBC.com headline here. Stock market live updates. Stocks dropped more than 2.5%. Shocking economic data. Bank earnings plunge. Again, we've had widening aisles in anthropology and retailers for some time now. People trying to cut jobs and to put less and less inventory out, even in grocery stores. And I have to thank my wife, Regina Meredith, on this because she's noticed it. She has a very keen eye for this sort of thing. And yet, that didn't figure its way into any kind of stock analysis. All this boosterism and the economy and it will go up and up and stock market will go up and up is finally beginning at this day to meet the reality of what life is like on the street, the burgeoning debt of families where both parents are working full time, the burgeoning and skyrocketing costs of rent and housing, in which over 50-60% of take-home income is being spent on these. The increasingly ridiculous and unattainable cost of education, which has risen something like 1,200, 1,300% in the last decade or 20 years. And of course, healthcare, as we all know about that, we pay twice as much as the rest of the world and get some of the worst results in the world in terms of general health outcomes from our country because it's a privatized care where we are being used. Basically, there's a basic figurative knife in her back and saying if you don't pay these premiums, then you could have a catastrophic loss. And even then, 2/3 of bankruptcies are created by the fact that we don't have health insurance and we go bankrupt. So all of these things are finally coming to a head, and the coronavirus, bless its little heart, as they would say in the South, is kind of pushing us to a kind of reality check. And this reality check is going to set into a whole cascade of things that are going to create new opportunities for us and a whole lot of new challenges. So let's start where we are right now. Sorry, I had to update the page on CNBC there to include the link. And they've even changed the headline a bit to stocks drop more than 2% to update it. But again, the most important things are there. Lately, the last things that they put in there have to do with the curve flattening in New York and stock valuations are reasonable. But if you go beyond that toward the beginning of the day, you get a much truer understanding of the markets finally beginning to understand that you and me and our consumer decisions are actually having something to do with how the stock market's going to go. And at 12:14 p.m. today, they said around midday, the major averages were down sharply as the most recent economic data and latest bank earnings reflected the damage being done by coronavirus. Financials slid quite a bit. People are beginning to understand that, that actually there is going to be a real demand slowdown. Some companies are doing well. I'm not going to go over that. Predictably, Amazon, Netflix, things that stay at home and people get things getting shipped to their home. But here's an interesting headline here. March economy was even worse than Wall Street expected. So economists could reduce already negative forecasts for the first quarter after March retail sales fell by 8.7%, and it's going to drop a lot more than that. And it was even more than the 8% expected. Petroleum is down, as one could expect, because of decreasing demand of gas. And this was at 10 that the stocks were extending losses. And this was a very good quote, JP Morgan on retail sales: all the toilet paper in the world can't clean up this report. So they're even talking about trying to fiddle with the stock market circuit breakers. It's beginning to get into people's notions. Home builder confidence at the biggest 1 month dive in history. Again, finally, people are beginning to understand, or the stock market's beginning to understand what you and I have probably known all along. We are up to our debt. I mean, I'm in a lucky situation. I don't have that situation with my wife and I. But for the most part, we've been asked to shoulder more and more of this economy. In 2008, we were asked to basically bail out to the tune of $24 trillion in loans and guarantees and write out grants to big business and to financial industry, which they then turned into nearly record bonuses in the next year after they tanked the entire economy. And so a greater and greater weight has always been placed on the shoulders. Doesn't matter if you're liberal, conservative, progressive, on your shoulders to bail out people who are irresponsible. And finally, it's coming due. We're seeing this home builder sentiment plunging. We're spending our stimulus checks on food, gas, and paying back friends. Again, that notion of community and getting back to the essentials, feeding family. And this is where all the money is going. Food, money transfers, a little bit to gas, probably to tank up your tank, because people are worried that the gas, who knows about the gas supplies. Video games and bill pay, and ATM withdrawals. And then the 2-year treasury is falling, which indicates, again, that people are flying to the safety of bonds and away from the stock market. Best Buy is furloughing 51,000 employees. And all of this is probably going to eventuate in Best Buy and many of these retailers or wholesalers going online and using this coronavirus as an excuse to permanently get rid of a good part of this workforce. You have to understand, 17 million people filed for unemployment. That's just the ones we know of in bad systems like Florida, where they have such a underfunded and inefficient system. The only reason why they haven't had more is because the system's broken and it can't handle it. But you can expect what a lot of people have already said. We're almost up to 20 million. People said 20 to 30 million people filing for unemployment. It may actually exceed 30 million. So if this is happening, how can we recover from this? I mean, how can we take the time to say, okay, I'm going to invest in stocks. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get my job back. One of the most telling situations, and I'll see if I can get this up on here, was a CNN series on all the small businesses, everything in New York, for instance, from owners of health clubs to this guy who custom designed lighting and sound for dance floors, to just the basic people who survive on tips and then have that immediately yanked away from them. These are all things that are real, and the economy, the Dow, the stock market has been detached from reality for so long, and I'll begin to explain why. It really, really happened in 2015, 2016, when they learned how to simply just jack up the stock market by buying up their own stocks with free money, and it didn't pay attention to fundamentals, and the rest of us were just going headlong. And now the hypnotism has been broken. We're forced to stay at home. We're forced to spend time with family. We're forced to redo the yard and do some reflection about this weird treadmill that we've been on, this sort of rat's wheel we've been on, trying to continue just poor activity. We're especially guilty of this in America. Individualism, activity, a new business, entrepreneurialism, and never asking the reflective questions. Is this sustainable? Is this healthy? Is it a good balance and use of my time? And now we're finally getting to there, and that's going to have serious impacts on the economy, and that's why I'm calling this the Great Decline and not the Great Depression. First of all, the Great Depression is a bit of a technical term, usually has to do with length of time for recovery. Everything's getting accelerated here. So length of time means little. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and try to click on here, and I'll pause this for a second and show you exactly how the length of time has changed. Here we go. Here you see a chart for the Dow Jones Industrial Average from 1896 all the way to 2016. And this person, I guess it's a virtue of selfishinvesting.com, which is the exact opposite of how I believe. So thank you for that. I have an exactly opposite philosophy, but thank you for providing the chart. If you notice in this chart, after the Great Depression, the recovery time was 25 years, okay? Then we had the real inflation and high interest rates in the mid-70s and early 80s, or even to the mid-80s, recovery time 16 years. The last time we had a recovery time of 6 years. So you can see that the recovery times are beginning to compact, to compress. And I did some calculation. I basically saw that it was about a factor of 20 from the Great Depression to here. Both the decline and the recovery will probably happen. Well, I don't know about the recovery because certain permanent things are going to happen, but the decline will probably happen in about a 20th or 15th of the time as it happened here in the Great Depression. People don't notice this, and I'm going to bring up another chart here, but the Great Depression lasted for the better part of the stock market aspect of it lasted for about 3.5 years. And the greatest drop happened right at the very end, not what the history books say, which was Black Thursday and October 29th and 1929. But all the way back in, I think it was 1932, about 3 years later. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at that chart because this gives us a clue about what we could expect now, but in a much more accelerated fashion. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to go ahead and pause this, and I'll get over to that chart. So here's the chart. And if you follow the chart of the Great Depression out, and I know there are many differences, so I'm not trying to suggest that we're going through just a retrace of this, okay? A little more sophisticated. One, it's going to be a lot more accelerated, though it does have some similarities. But two, and we are in a different era. But two, we are coming to a time where the things that sustain a stock market, beyond all the speculation and frenzy and artificial jacking up the stock market created by zero interest on money, basically, for the last 10 years is now coming due. And it's running smack into the actual demand and ability of American people to support it. Now, Americans have been fairly, I guess you would say, economic loyalists. They've taken on the extra burden, tried to buy more, tried to have more activity, tried to see life in terms of more experiences, more travel, more of everything. And now we're being thrown into a situation where literally the most sort of the prime month for sports in America is March. You have March Madness, one of the most popular sports things, which has to do with the college basketball tournament. You have the NBA coming to a National Basketball Association coming to a conclusion with the playoffs going to be started. You have baseball starting up. Everyone who's a sports fan knows that March is the month. And guess what just happened? All of that was taken away. All of it. It's joke looking on ESPN now. They're just trying to find stuff. It's just a joke. I can't even watch. It's unwatchable now because literally they're trying to spend a half an hour on Tom Brady's new team or something like that. So here we are in a situation in which all these activities and addictions and ways of understanding the good life have been ripped from us. Now we're concentrated, we're in a reflective moment, and we're forced into that reflective moment and away from our even human contact with others. And I think what we're going to find is that maybe we just had our values a little misplaced. Maybe we were over frenzied in terms of purchasing. Maybe we kind of like things to be quieter and simpler and more focused on community and family. And if that really begins to take hold, and I think it will as this experience forces us out of that addiction and activity and into a more intimate and simple life, it's going to have serious impacts on the economy and its so-called recovery. First of all, I don't believe it's going to recover anywhere near the 29,000 points or so at nearly 30,000 points that the stock market was at its high, because it was all driven by speculation frenzy, free money artificially jacking up the price of stocks, which is what happened in the Great Depression. Right here, right before it dropped in 1929, there was speculation in land and agriculture, which actually ended up creating the Dust Bowl. Not creating the Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl exposed speculation in marginal farmland, such that, bam, all those investments were wiped out. And that continued for some time, and it created some kind of food shortage as well. There was over speculation, and in fact, normal people got in on this. It's less so now because the vast majority of stocks are owned by a very small percentage of the American population or the world population. And so, of course, they also tend to influence and own the political system here too. So we're getting into a tug of war, whereby our politics are going to be, in some sense, I think, forced to attend to the real needs of people. It's more important to have food on your plate than it is to keep the stock market up. That's the choice that politicians are going to have to make in the upcoming year, year and a half. So anyway, we look at this and we notice a bunch of cascades, and then just like the American optimism, back up. Oh yeah, we're gonna go back up. Oh phew, there's that decline. There's some money made along the way. Down again, and a little bit of creep up, and then down again, and a little bit of a creep up. I call these H. There's L-shaped recoveries. Those are the kind you don't like, where it goes down and stays down. There are U-shaped recoveries that go down, stays down a little bit, and comes back up. And then the ones they love are V, goes down really high and comes back really up. Nobody's talking about the H-shaped, in some sense, non-recovery. That's what you have here. These are a bunch of H's. Either you can think of them as a printed, lowercase printed H, or you can think of them as a script H, where you kind of count here, boom, there's another H, right? And into another H, into another H, into another H. And I believe that's what we're going to have now. Again, none of this is, guys, I'm not giving out financial advice or investment advice here. I'm looking at macro, look at the economy, that kind of implications for you and your family. So do not take this as some kind of crystal ball into what you should be doing. Contact your financial advisors. Don't put it on me. Use your own mind and your own intuition and do your own research. I'm just but one source of this, and I'm by no means the definitive source. So if you notice, it didn't really get down toward the end of 1932 toward its bottom, and look how much it dropped. It looks like it was about 4,000 up here, all the way down to less than 500. I think this economy has a potential to drop, overshoot. I think the basic value of the market before they manipulate up can be seen in the 2015, 2016. That's right here. Okay, that's right around 15 to 16,000. I think that's the basic value floor for the market. That's before they just jacked it up. This person thought there would be a stock market crash then. He was completely wrong. It ended up going all the way up to 29,000. But that's because they learned at this point a new technology called buying up your own stocks. I call it naked long buying, where you just borrow unlimited sums of money at nearly 0% interest and just freaking jack up your own stock, and then use the increased value of the jacked up stock to borrow more money to jack up your stock even more. It became I call it a radical decoupling between the actual real economy, which had to do with demands and profits and revenues and providing something of quality and having customer service, and this fake economy, which just had to do with buying indiscriminately your own stock, sometimes with your own dividend money, sometimes with borrowed money, against the value of your own company, so that it didn't matter that you weren't really providing anything or having revenue, because literally you could just by sheer force of demand alone jack up the price. And that's what happened. So we got what we got, which was this market that zoomed out of sight, no regulation, and now we're coming due on that one. And I'll back up a little bit. If we go back to the 2008 and 2009, again, you can see where I'm getting this from, the greatrecession.info. You'll notice that what happened in 2008 and 2009, and that's what my book talked about. My book is, again, Transforming Economy. You can find it on Amazon under Zeus Yamayanis, and it's Transforming Economy from Corrupted Capitalism to Connected Communities. And it's actually more relevant now than it ever has been, because I talk about the future that happens after we have a reckoning. We didn't have that reckoning, as you can see here. We had these kind of fudgy tops. We had like 3 of them. That was not a U-shaped, L-shaped, or V-shaped recovery. It's kind of like a fat W-shaped decline, and then finally just picked back up again. Why did it do this? Because you and I were absorbing, little by little, all of those costs. Many people don't know this, but what happened during that recession was that literally banks were given free money by the Federal Reserve. And then they lent that money at interest out to the US government. And they used that interest to pay off their debts. So when you hear that thing about these businesses paid back the American people after they borrowed the money from the government, that's crap. What they did was lend out that money to the government at interest after getting it zero, and then they used the interest to the tune of tens of billions of dollars to pay their so-called debts by charging us interest on the money we lent them, okay? Or in this case, the Fed, which is a private entity, lent, making us pay the interest and therefore pay the banks back the very money that we bailed them out with. So don't let anyone say that we got paid back. We didn't. We got charged interest on money, and then we were paid back with the very interest we paid their debts. And you can read all about this in my book, Transforming Economy, and I encourage you to pick up a copy. Again, on Amazon. So here we are. We were the ones bailing them out here. We're the ones shouldering all the debt. Then we go down and we see they're like, what lessons have they learned? Like a small child. They learned 1, 2008, 2009. We can literally do illegal crap and get charged pennies on the dollars. No one, Democrat or Republican, is going to come after us. We've got both of them underneath our influence. And no matter how big we are and how badly we fail, the bigger we get, the more we can fail, and we'll always get bailed out. That's what 2008 and 2009 taught them. 2015 and 16 taught them, not only will they be bailed out, but they can borrow endless amounts of money, buy up their own stocks, and jack the stock market up into the stratosphere way beyond any kind of fundamentals. Okay? And so now we come to what we have today. We have a market that's tanking, okay, and doing that H-shaped recovery that we saw up here. The first couple of bumps have already happened. I'll go back to a chart to let you know, okay? But it's accelerated. It's not going to take 3 years to get down here, okay? It's not going to take 3 years. It's going to take 3 months to get down to there, or 4 months. And that recovery is not going to be boom back up again in a V-shaped recovery. How can it be? American households are already indebted to the max. Businesses will use this decline to eliminate untold numbers of jobs, especially in retail. And Americans are going to rebel by saying, you don't pay us, don't give us jobs, we're going to stop buying stuff. There may be even a section of them that rebel against paying their taxes. I doubt most people are going to go down that road, but I wouldn't doubt if there's a movement that says our taxes are being used to pay off these corrupt businesses rather than to actually serve us. So you can expect to see political movements about better uses of our tax money. But think about that. If this thing is being reduced like by a factor of 15 or 20, you shrink 3 years down to divide it by a 15 or 20, you're talking a period of months, right? You're talking a period of months where this thing is going to, if it follows the series of H-shaped declines, you're going to get down there. So I think that's what you can expect. Again, what you do that in terms of investment, where you put your money. I personally don't think financial stocks are going to do that well. I personally don't think most stocks are going to do well. The stocks that are going to do well or have to do with people at their homes, creating these communities. And, and again, this is not really the purpose of this. We can do another video on which ones look like, given this macro analysis, which ones look like they might have some promising futures. But right now, I'm here to bring this forward just to let you know what's going on. Don't believe the hype. out there, these business channels will always tell you there's a turnaround. We've hit the bottom. And then it goes down again. Oh, we really hit the bottom. And then it goes down again. So if you have retirement and so forth in the stock market, just know, at least in my opinion, it's going to go down a lot longer. And that not just a flight to safety, a rational move towards safety is not a bad idea. So, in terms of disclosure, my wife and I have quite a bit of money in physical silver. Well, we have money and in stored gold, actual tangible metals. And we don't do exchange traded funds. We have limited exposure in the stock market right now, and most of it is in cash and and stored. Of course, we have to trust our credit union and our banks to keep these safe for us. And people say that maybe not be well-placed trust, but again, going back to the community thing, we are supporting our local credit union to lend money out to local businesses. So we believe in that, and we're ready to accept that risk. That's how we're doing it, and we're trying to put our time and our money into our house, to local business, to creating solar for our house, including energy storage. These are going to be the productive investments. They're going to save energy, they're going to create independence, and they're going to allow you, especially with us with PG&E, the turning off our power all the time, allow us to have a consistent supply of energy up to a week with batteries that are associated with our solar energy. So these are the kind of decisions we're going to have to make, and you're seeing them right now in the way that governors and states and localities are having to make decisions because we have complete lack of leadership at the federal level. The president is a moron. I'll say it right now. He's not fighting the deep state. I don't even know what you would call him, okay? And I'm not in favor of the Democratic establishment either. They have been nothing but enablers. What's going to have to happen is what you're seeing with the governors. They're deciding to make their own policy, and communities making their own policies to support the people directly. And we have to band together to do the same thing. Again, you'll see a lot of ways to do that in my book, Transforming Economy, From Corrupted Capitalism to Connected Communities. You can find it on Amazon. My whole last third of my book are exactly ways in which to do this. So I really recommend you do that. So let me see what else I want to go here before getting off, before jumping off here. All right, trying to stop this here, see if I can get it to work. Okay, so sorry about that, a little slip up. But here's the current stock market. And if you trace it along, you can almost see that you could consider that one H, but it's a little bit minor. You see it dipping here pretty quickly to the first H. That got down to about 18.5. Jump back up thanks to all the fear in the market, and it's starting to level off here. And the real economy is starting to filter into stock market analysis, and I believe that it will continue to go down from there. At some point, it will retrace. It will not retrace. It will go past, one would think, using this analysis, and we'll see. If it doesn't, then I'm wrong. And you guys can say, get rid of this guy. If what I'm saying seems to make sense to you, and it seems to create, if there is an actual fundamental basis for the way that the market moves, then we can go ahead and say, okay, there's something to this. And again, it doesn't take much. I mean, here's the thing that I just want to say to those market analysts out there who are basically, this is nothing more than gambling for them. There are real people out there, 17 million who filed for unemployment, a whole score that are in line to file for unemployment. Many of them, their jobs are not coming back. People in retail that are working in malls, selling clothes, a good many, millions of those jobs will disappear and not come back. Small businesses, and I saw this again on CNN, little businesses that require this flow of money. If people cut back because they don't have the money, if they decide not to go to a health club because they just buy a little bit of a home gym, or they end up going to a cheaper gym, say they went to their neighborhood gym loaned by a small business, but they like, I don't know if I can afford it, I'm going to go to Planet Fitness, charges half as much or whatever, then they may begin to do these things. I do encourage each and every one of you, as I did in my book, Transforming Economy, From Corrupted Capitalism to Connected Communities, again, available on Amazon, to support your local businesses, even if they cost a little bit more. Because investment in the community is going to be one of the most important ways forward. There are three things that you're going to have to know, and I'll do a separate video on this. Three C's, I call them. Community being the most important one. Coin, in this case, gold and silver and cash. And cash. Coin, gold and silver, community, and cash in terms of just investing. This stuff is going to crater. Many people are going to start moving in with each other, creating, I think, a real glut in the supply of housing. If you can't afford your house anymore, and the housing starts to go down because people start selling them to move in with other people, what's going to happen to the housing market? If you have a store of value in the housing market, that's something to consider. Again, I'm not recommending you sell your house, but think about it. If people do not have that, and they're having this come together moment, and you add to the fact that people are beginning to realize it's important to be close to family, even though it's driving you kind of crazy, being forced into that situation, it would create a much starker alternative to the American dream of owning your own McMansion and owning 3 or 4 cars and owning all these things. I think many of it's going to collapse as people realize the maintenance cost of these things is too high, and it interrupts the quality of life you can have with your kids and your community. So as we begin to rebel by making purchasing decisions that bring us away from all the addiction that's involved in the stock market, and we see that it's a rigged game, and we don't have any real investment in it, almost all these stocks are owned by very few people, we're like, shoot, we're walking away. We're defaulting on this so-called patriotic obligation to buy. And it's going to open up new opportunities for us. So that's the thing that we have to look forward to. That's the opportunity in all of this. Don't be fearful. Understand the opportunity of this is to become more intimate, more committed, more simple. Strip down, allow the more important things in life. Again, if you're conservative, that has to do with the reemergence of sort of moral or family life. If you're conservative or liberal, same thing. This is something that are broadly human. And we've all been guilty to one another of engaging in this addictive capacity of endless activity, endless buying, and endless debt. And now that Wall Street is beginning to default on their obligations, and believe me, they will, we can say, okay. And there are some emerging examples of what it will look like. I look at the organic food industry and I think, now there's a great example of corporations having to follow people. People said, no more pesticide-laden foods for me. I'm moving over to organics. And so what happened, these companies start buying up organics, or Tyson Foods and ConAgra, some of the most non-politically correct companies are saying, maybe we should make meatless products because there's a market for them. So we can do the same too. We begin to lead by the choices we make in terms of the quality of life we want. And, and that's my message really here. We are going to lead by the politically, economically, creatively, and in community by the quality and of the thought process, by the quality of our hearts, by the quality of the choices that we make going forward. No, we are in a different era. Today, April 15th, 2020 will be a new era. It won't probably be in the textbooks or the history books, but it is a new era because it is asking us to fundamentally reflect on the kind of life we want to lead. It's forcing us toward family. It's forcing us into simplicity. It's forcing us to understand we cannot continue to keep growing without end. And it's also helping us understand the opportunities involved in that, and then taking the burden off ourselves and not just engaging this endless borrowing and endless activity. So, it may not benefit the cruise lines. I think they're going to be, I personally think they're toast for the most part. I don't think we're going to go back to that as we look at this. And a lot of the traveling and a lot of the energy expenditures, we're seeing that we have clear skies. For the first time ever, Manila, a place I spent about 3 years in, finally you can actually see all the ways in which all the trails of the planes up in the sky heavily diminished. We're beginning to realize, wait a minute, maybe this quieter, simpler, less energy intensive life is a better one. And as we move in that direction, as we move in with each other, we can begin to say, okay, we're going to create the demand that other companies will have to follow. And they say when the people lead, then the leaders will have to follow. And I think that's now more apparent than anything. And I also think it's going to be an opportunity to get past these partisan divides by creating policy, by creating choices across political lines that allow for working class families to be honored and put up at the top where they should be, rather than corporations and very wealthy people, because we're going to need to feed each other, not just ourselves. We're going to need to be able to live together. And we're going to need to be able to prepare a future for our children, which we are not doing now at all. Completely unsustainable. This is renewable fuels. Many of the things that was actually shown forward by Bernie Sanders are going to become adopted, I think, by conservatives as well. So it is hopeful. And I'm at 35 minutes. I think this is good enough for this video. So again, appreciate you taking the time to listen. Pick up my book, Transforming Economy from Corrupted Capitalism to Connected Communities, on Amazon. My name is Zeus Yamayanis. By the way, this is the book. My name is Zeus Yamayanis, and I have a PhD in philosophy of education with a special interest in alternative economies. You can see a lot of my articles also on of2minds.com. And that's my good friend Charles Smith's great analysis of not just economy, but life. And I recommend his site as well. So until next time, this is Zeus signing off.